I think it's
It
pretty
hurts
good.
to hear it. I felt like a neck ache when you said it.
Hello and welcome everyone to Taco Movie Talks. I am here with the Dad Man. We are discussing horror movies again. If you like to just listen, this will be on Spotify as well in the description below. And the three movies that we are going to be covering today: Hellraiser, the original; Hellraiser, the newest rendition, the reboot; and Tim Burton's classic Beetlejuice, which is Dad Man's favorite movie. You're really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not a horror movie, but
So let's get into that discussion because that is frequently something that I think about are crime movies that involve murder, horror movies. It's a horrible thing.
no, not always.
So you're kind of a purist.
I'm a purist.
I would say Beetlejuice definitely has horror aspects, but it's not quite what they're not trying to just scare you. It's more entertainment while using those macabre visual elements. Whereas Hellraiser, the original specifically, is definitely horror, and the remake is too. But whether it was super effective is kind of a good point to kind of go over. But overall, I'm glad I watched the remake again. I think it's definitely like a horror staple.
Yeah. It's kind of what do they call those movies that has just a very specific audience, like the Evil
Cult.
Dead? Like it's a
Cult
cult
classic.
It's a cult classic.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. I don't think it's as much in the zeitgeist as Jason
No,
or Michael Myers.
absolutely, yeah.
Even Leatherface, I think, is more in the zeitgeist. But for people who are horror fans, it's definitely very well respected.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Are we talking about the first one? Yeah. I mean, it created an iconic character. I think that in the concept of the Cenobites and all that, the mythology for true horror people, I've always liked Hellraiser. I just thought it was never really treated well. It just had a lot of potential. That the first one didn't do a bad job, but it was a low budget film. I
think it maximized what it did do.
Yeah, it did. It did. The father that is kind of converted from his brother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just is lecherous. You know what I mean? He's looking at the daughter in a very lascivious way, and it's definitely evil.
He's you could say he's like is it hedonism
Yes.
personified?
Yes.
And
With no moral at all, or morality.
yeah, he's just completely driven by
Pleasure.
yeah, and
Especially sexual pleasure.
yeah,
With that particular character.
kind of just animalistic in the way that he does whatever suits him.
Yeah.
Without much thought of others, and is manipulative in that way, especially towards the mother-in-law, or is she the actual mother of the daughter?
She's not the mother of the daughter. She's a second marriage for
Stepmother.
Stepmother. Yeah.
Yes, because they mentioned that the mother passed away, correct?
Yeah.
And the daughter's just getting to know the mother, who turns out to I think it's a movie that's really has multiple kind of villains and protagonists, because the father comes off as like a very just kind of saintly type of guy.
Yeah.
that might be a step too far, but he's definitely a protagonist that you can root for and has impact when he actually is taken out.
Yeah. I mean, he's a likable character. He is a protagonist. So is the girl's boyfriend.
Yeah, he's a good character as well, though he's not utilized too much, and I think probably just the right amount.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there when he's needed.
Yeah, he's he's a secondary character.
Yeah.
So, but I think the whole one of the keys to the movie is the daughter. It's the pursuit of the daughter by who actually is her uncle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there seem to be some underlying things there that are kind of left unsaid, but it seems as though he has either always looked at her in a bad way, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
In that there might have been things in the past that, because she seemed to be very
leery of him.
Yes. So whether it was just she kind of picked up on his nature or heard stories from the father or whatever, but there seemed to be an underlying tension there, and that they don't go into too much, they don't over-explain.
No, but I mean, it's enough that you understand that she knows who he is.
Yeah.
And, so she's the innocent in...
And I guess you could say the stepmother is like the corrupted
yes
person.
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
equation.
She's very... I mean, she just has that look about her. She was, I think, cast well.
Yeah, I was going to say she did a tremendous job.
Yeah, just her eyes, it just, you just knew you couldn't trust her, that she was...
Even the makeup, I thought, really contributed to her having a look of...
Yeah.
And she was, like, one of the people I hated the most. See, like, with Frank, I could kind of understand that it's just his... I don't know. He got more of a pass from me for whatever reason, because you're like, well, he's disgusting. But she seemed like she was teetering and kind of realized she was being manipulated by him.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess she kind of falls into the same exact boat as him. But for whatever reason, she rubbed me the wrong way, even worse so than Frank.
Yeah, no, I understand. I don't know why, but she just had a look about her. It was, like I said, she was well cast, at least, physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she acted well. And then the actor who played the father was good because he played both sides well.
Yeah, because he had to basically act as a different character near the end. And yeah, he had a very foreboding kind of energy to him at the end, and
sinister.
Yeah, that's definitely more what I was trying to verbalize. But and it was a really good ambiguous thing when she came back, because I think on like first viewing you probably wouldn't necessarily know if a transition had occurred, if Frank was still alive or not.
Right. Yeah.
And you kind of find out with the main character, and that when that can be accomplished, that's a good good thing to
he
do.
pulled it off. But I mean, it was the part where I guess it's the attic, right? Where it's all the action as far as Pinhead goes and so forth, and it's brutal. It's really raw.
Yeah,
what they show up there and so forth. So it was a good movie, and I shouldn't. It could have been, if it was high production values and so forth. Like you said, they did a lot with an awful lot.
Yeah, I like the goriness of it was.
It's okay.
I don't know. I kind of like movies that are gory. It's not too, well, I don't know. I guess it was a very gory movie, actually, when you consider Frank, his transformation.
Yeah.
And that makeup was, like, awesome.
Yeah.
He was delicious.
I mean, they're like tearing skin.
Yeah, that was...
Skin. So that's...
The fake skin they used, I thought, was tremendous. You could kind of tell, obviously, with any movie, it's not real.
Isn't there the scene with the face? The face is stretched.
At the end.
Yeah.
That was really good. Yeah, whatever the hell they were using, it might have been latex. I'm not sure. That's not my area of expertise, but I'm an admirer, I guess, of good makeup.
Yeah.
And
that was well done.
See, Cronenberg, he specializes, I guess, in body horror, and I'm not sure whether this would fit into that bucket, right? But I was like, whoever did this, Clive Barker, who's first and foremost a good writer.
Yeah.
But I was like, it seems like he wants to fill in that specialty, but I don't think he really, as far as directing, ever really dove fully into it. But I would have loved to see his dark take on the kind of body horror-esque stuff that he did.
Yeah.
So I watched Nightbreed. It's another Clive Barker movie. It also has a cult following, but it was more or less using the makeup to give people really cool character designs. That seems to be something that he's very interested in.
Yeah.
Is the Cenobites are clearly just some of the best character designed ideas you can come up with.
Well, and the new one I think is really...
Yeah, but a lot of those ideas are from the blueprint or even just kind of like copy-paste of the original. The Chatterer is one of the more iconic ones. Yeah. Pinhead, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then I think they even kind of borrowed some ideas that came maybe later on in the series, although I'm not sure how long Clive Barker stayed with the series. I don't know if he even did any of the sequels.
Yeah, I don't know either. Some of them were really bad. I think they just thought, we'll grab the name, we'll make it somewhat tangentially about
the Cenobites.
And people will come see it. But we won't worry about a script. We'll hire people off the street, basically, and put a movie together cheap and, make some money. I like the actor of Pinhead. There's something about, the dark eyes, and then he's a sneer.
Yes.
And that sneer is it's just his distaste for everyone.
Yeah.
People exist for him to inflict pain.
Yeah.
So it's just he obviously he's a different life form than a human. He was originally a human, but he's converted into this different life form that despises human beings and loves to torture them or inflict pain.
There was a discussion. I was watching this with Big Chungus, and I had a misconception because of what I knew about Pinhead's past, and I thought like pretty much everyone that fell victim to the puzzle box was turned into a Cenobite, and that doesn't seem to be the case necessarily.
No, it doesn't. And I've thought about that too. That it does. Some are, some aren't. But even to be turned into a Cenobite is a form of torture. Mm-hmm. But so the actual man who became the Cenobite of Pinhead was, and I've always thought they conveyed this, and they didn't do it very overtly, but it was someone he was a war veteran who just became lost. He just didn't have the any direction. He didn't understand the meaning of his life or the meaning of life at all. So he was searching, and that's what brought him to the box and his desire to search what's in the box. Mm-hmm. That's a different. That's a theme that that I've always picked up on, and I kind of understood it as being important and so forth. But I know there was one line from, and I don't know if it was the original or not the second, that I thought was like, I don't know, just really iconic, where the Cenobites made a deal with somebody, and the deal was for this person, I don't know, if to bring back someone else to replace them, to be tortured. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you don't follow through in this, your agony will be legendary even in hell. Mm-hmm. And it was, you just got the impression it's like, because they torture the crap out of people, mm-hmm. and he would make a special case, of this particular person. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's just so much there, like all these specific little choices just add so much to the movie.
Did you notice when you watched the remake that they talked about the Leviathan?
Yeah, and I think that's a huge aspect to like that, and I think they go into that in some of the sequels.
The sequels. The second one they talk about the Leviathan, mm-hmm. which is, I don't know if you are aware of it. It's a sea creature of enormous proportion.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean the term
is it Lovecraftian or no?
No, it may be. I'm not sure, but it has come to be considered like an entity of enormous proportion that consumes everything. That's what a Leviathan has come to mean. Originally, it was a sea creature, and I don't know. And that actually might be from Greek mythology or something. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. They mention it in the second one, and in a remake, and I don't fully understand why, and I don't know what it signifies.
It's like I think it's the god that makes everything possible. It's basically like that is like the big boss at the end of this lineage.
Over the Cenobites.
Yeah, the boss of not only the Cenobites.
Well, that is Satan. Satan is the boss of the Cenobites. In the readings I've done,
Leviathan Satan then, or
probably. It's just, like almost an infinite entity, of enormous proportion and so forth. So, at least in other things I read, when I read Scarlet Gospels, Pinhead wants to become Satan. Mm-hmm. That's what, and there's another subplot in that as well. And I don't know, it's really interesting. It's a very, very good read. If you like horror, it's incredibly good.
I do want to read that, because just that plot line alone sounds really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you don't... and I've often thought, like, when I first... There's very, very few horror movies that really talk... I mean, they discuss hell. Mm-hmm. You talk about demons and so forth, but they don't deal with... Now, that book was in, the setting for most of it. Other parts weren't, was hell.
Yeah.
It was hell. And that's where Pinhead was, and that's where, he wanted to supplant Satan as the leader of all that's evil in hell.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be handled with expertise for sure, because if you butcher that, it's going to come off just terribly.
Yeah.
And I think it's an undertaking that some directors are probably scared to attempt.
Yeah, but when you think of a movie like Inception, for mm-hmm. instance, which was like so easy to screw that up, and immaculate movie. Mm-hmm. I was reading a list, and I don't know what the list was, what type of movies. Maybe it was horror movies, and I'm thinking Inception's not a horror movie, but any list Inception's in, it should be in the top 5. It's incredibly well done, well written, and stuff like that. So I think you're right. I think it would be very, very hard to make that well. That, Scarlet Gospels. Mm-hmm. Very easy to come off just cheesy and campy and,
They should do it, though.
I'd love to see it done.
And that probably should have been the direction that they did when they rebooted it.
No. I'm fine with them bringing it back as they did. It was fine. Now, I think...
Follow up with that.
Yes. because now Pinhead has been reestablished, in a new generation of, a particular type of character. And although, Pinhead didn't have as big a role as it was a woman. It's supposed to be androgynous, but you could tell it's a woman as an actress.
The voice was
Which is
what
fine.
was androgynous. The figure was more feminine.
Yeah, yeah. And he was masculine. In the original, it doesn't matter. But the original was just the way he looked. Although, the new one isn't not bad, the original was just the personification of evil.
He played, as far as screen time went, I think I was kind of surprised that he was not on the screen very often, and that like half of his lines were iconic and repeated. As far like when you talk about Hellraiser, it's every other line whenever people quote the movie. It's one of his lines, because it's all very poetic and prophetic. Everything,
Profound.
yes,
Yeah.
everything that he says is very.
Well, he's regal in an evil sense.
Yeah.
He is not, he's the drug kingpin. He's not the street thug. To make an analogy.
Yeah, very, very, like, he's the priest of
He's Hell's
hell,
priest. Hell's priest.
and he definitely came off like that.
Yeah.
And his minions also even seem high level.
Right.
Like, the woman Cenobite in the original comes off like she has some weight to her as a character.
Yes.
And Chatterer kind of comes off like he's the henchman who can protect a person who's high level, like Pinhead comes off. And they don't do that by having certain lines of dialogue that say, "Oh, you're Hell's priest." It's just the way that they carry themselves, the way that they're written, and the things that they do. So they very much show you and don't tell you those things, but you still understand them because of how it is illustrated.
I just looked up Leviathan. It's from the Bible. But the thing you notice about, and I don't understand Pinhead's pins. I mean, the woman in the original, her throat is opened. So you knew they went through some form of torture to become a Cenobite. The Chatter,
There was some transcending event
that was unpleasant.
Yeah.
A form of torture. And in the second one I think is maybe the best. I would recommend that to anybody. I mean, I think it's as good as the original. There's a very, there's a doctor who wants to experience, whatever, immortality, the ultimate pain or pleasure. And he uses a girl in a catatonic state as bait or something. I can't remember exactly. And it's very good. Very good. It's not, high level production, but the plot was good. And the doctor, becomes a Cenobite. You just, he's an antagonist and you dislike him. And, and there is an antagonist who's a girl that helps the girl in a catatonic state. She rescues her or whatever. So, but it's fairly brutal.
The grittiness to the film, I think, plays in its favor.
Yeah.
For the original.
Yeah.
And the remake, it definitely seems like it has a brand new coat of paint on it. And I'm not sure if that actually benefits the movie.
They had tried to make it a little gritty, with her being basically a recovered addict who, I don't even think she works. She kind of lives with her brother.
Yeah. I don't want to be too critical. Before we dive too deep into the remake, what do you have any final thoughts on the original? What would you rate it?
I rate out, I think it's out of 10. You seem to go at 5. I'd give it an 8.
So I'm really close. I would give it what would be a 7 on your scale?
Okay. I mean, it just because not necessarily what all it did, but what it could be done. It created a very interesting mythology, just incredibly,
Well, it makes me want to know as much about it as I can.
right. Yeah.
The puzzle box is like a Pandora's box of sorts, but it's been just so it's just way more even. It strikes us to where like Pandora's box obviously is supposed to be evil, and the way that they show how evil it is more relevant to people now, if that makes sense.
Because it's an updated of a Pandora's
when you say
box.
sickness
Modern.
came from Pandora's box.
Yeah.
We can't quite, because an existence without sickness we can't quite comprehend something like that, right?
Right.
But a life without extreme pain is very easy to think of, and then putting someone through that pain, we're able to kind of grasp how terrible a fate that is.
Right. Right. But it's also a cautionary tale in that to go for I guess a good analogy would be drugs.
Yes.
Like heroin specifically, or LSD or
They
something like that.
come with a price.
Yeah, with a horrible price. And
I never quite put that.
it actually just kind of dawned on me. And it's in these ultimate, experiences. And although, like, whenever you try to pursue those, there's a real downside. And you almost always, you can't cheat the devil. You can't, cheat the hangman. It's, your fate. If you are too greedy or whatever, you seek out too much, is ultimate. You're ultimately going to pay a price, a heavy price.
Yeah. It works on so many levels that it can be kind of in the same realm as if you're trying to uncover knowledge that should be unknowable. Like if you just look at like a Frankenstein, for example, some things are sacred fruit for a reason.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't play God.
Exactly.
Or know God.
So it's like to try to transcend to a different realm, it makes... Once you've touched the highest of highs, you can't go back.
Yeah.
There's another movie...
Icarus, almost Icarus.
Yeah, if you fly too close to the sun. There was another movie that I watched recently that really thematically fell right in with that. And I can't freaking remember what it was. But, I mean, those early Universal movies do that all the time. Invisible Man is like just trying to do things that they're forbidden.
Or beyond what humans should try to do.
The remake was very mixed for me because there was a lot of glaring flaws that, as someone who likes the idea and sees unlimited potential for what it could be when it's not perfected, and I don't know if it ever could be perfected. I would hope eventually it would be. You get a little bit bummed out. Kind of the way that Star Wars fans are, right?
Yeah.
But I also thought that it was handled good enough to where it could spring something.
Well, I'm hoping the next time, and they left it open. I mean, they fed right into a sequel. They can do more with it because it wasn't. The plot was. I mean, there were like two kind of plot twists. The one being her boyfriend was, working in concert with this guy whom everybody kind of thought was dead. Other than that, the plot was
It's very surface level, I kind of thought.
yeah, it wasn't. There was no depth. It really they didn't put enough into that part of it. It wasn't terribly well written. It was acted fairly well, I thought. Not poorly.
Yeah. I mean, the main girl was serviceable. I thought the brother was good. He's from 13 Reasons Why, if you remember.
Oh yeah. That's right. He is.
But he
I knew
was,
had seen him before.
right. He was, I thought, one of the best actors, and he wasn't in it for
No, he wasn't in it much.
very much.
Right.
But like those early interactions where they were kind of butting heads, I was like, he was good.
Yeah.
She seemed overly dramatic and almost not believable. She almost felt
Maybe.
like it felt like a performance.
Well, there was this part. Well, you show those two together in bed, and then it says on screen 6 years later. Do you remember that? I'm like, what?
The brother and his boyfriend?
No, the girl and his Trevor, I think was his name. The girl and Trevor were in bed.
Okay.
And then they put up on screen and it says something like 6 years later.
I don't quite remember that, and I don't.
should
And
double check
honestly,
I'm like, it
Why
doesn't
would
make
they
any
do
sense.
that?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
I think the times. No. That might have came just before they were in bed, because they were showing the man whose house he turned into a Leviathan puzzle, or the mansion that had the.
Yeah. Oh, when he had the guy come in and he.
Yeah.
Okay, so right. Oh, that's where the 6 years is. And all right, and then the girl goes to Czechoslovakia or something to get the puzzle box.
The puzzle box
and
again.
brings it back for him, and all right. So what was his? He wanted to use it, but what
He wanted
God's thing was
pleasure.
in his chest.
So yeah, that's a good place to start, because it wasn't anything that was like relatively familiar to people. So
It looked like an accordion.
it looked like a
Typewriter, maybe.
piece of a car to me. It looked like it had pistons, I thought, but it was like it was pulling, I think, nerves.
Yeah, he was definitely pulling something. Probably.
It didn't look like a nerve, although I don't know what a fucking nerve looked.
It probably looked like that.
Yeah, it looked thicker though than.
Yeah.
But maybe it was blood vessels. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, but I don't. That part didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand.
It didn't.
Looked like he got half converted.
Yeah, but it was like he got his wish, but it was a monkey's paw.
Yeah, so it is.
scenario.
Monkey's paw is like the explains his story.
So it was it wasn't very effective.
I mean, it was. Oh, I just thought they could have done something other than that. I didn't.
It would have been
I
more.
mean, I
effective.
understand the turning, and you could feel that he was in, excruciating pain and stuff. I just, I didn't understand that. I mean, that part wasn't that bad, and he was definitely a villain, because if you read about him, he was into
Yeah.
debauchery, and he was like the Marquis de Sade or something like that.
Yeah, they
So-
could have leaned into that a lot more.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
That might have
you
been
really wanted to make him deserving.
Yeah.
And the climax was, it just, I don't know. They didn't do enough with. I mean, the Cenobites look incredible. They were incredible.
Yeah, that's the new coat of paint type
Yeah.
thing. Is that the makeup or CGI? I'm not really quite sure, which
I
is
don't
a
think it
good
was
thing.
CGI. I don't
Well,
think it. I mean, maybe it
Probably
was.
not then, but yeah, they looked really good, but they didn't have quite as much personality as I think they had in the original either.
Yeah, their interactions were really, really limited. They just were standing there and walking real slow.
A little flat. Yeah, they didn't seem nearly as... In the original, like, it felt like this is like a force that is... it's like damnation.
Yeah.
Where you don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
And then they put the gates down, and I was like, they almost seem like zombies now.
Yeah.
Where it's like you can just kind of outthink them. And that's not what I think you can or should go for.
Yeah.
You know, in the original, she was able to, like, walk out of the room, right? But you had a sense that it's like, it's inevitable, though.
Yeah.
And if you don't...
You're not getting away from this.
Yeah. It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah,
You're just delaying.
Delayed the inevitable.
Whereas with this, you could maybe argue that it feels like that too, but it's like, I don't know, if you get crafty, you could just...
You could definitely outrun them.
Yeah.
Although they seem to showed up in the van and
that part did make it like that from that aspect that they could enter you into a different realm.
Yeah, and the 6 different levels of configuration and
that
stuff,
was
that's all
neat.
new.
And I really liked that.
It was I can't remember what obviously the one is An Audience with God was the last one.
Yeah, but that seemed... I was a little confused. It's like you had to choose one of the...
Well, the girl got to. I don't know if everyone does.
So they essentially are like, okay, so you choose this. They even did that with her.
Well, they gave her that choice. I don't know if
Oh.
that always happens because I think you get to the end, the last configuration, and then you could pick. Which what did she pick? I can't remember. Was everything to...
They and I can't remember because they were all words that started with L, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they, but hers was like pain. Like it was the equivalent of suffering, because she wanted to live in a world that was made worse by her actions, rather than try to correct it with one of the other options.
Okay. She wanted the most realistic.
Yeah, she instead of choosing Lazarus, which would have been the resurrection.
Bring her brother back.
Yeah, she chose none. 'Cause she knew that everything came with a heftier price. Yeah. And so their explanation was, okay, so you choose suffering, and you will live with the...
Guilt.
Yeah. Which was cool.
Yeah, that's the right choice, obviously.
Yeah, and
For, any other thing would be,
gave her a character arc, because it kind of was symbolic of her learning to take accountability
for what her actions.
And because that seemed to be like the crux of what her addiction boiled down to, I think, was her inability to
face.
Yeah. So that was neat. That was well written, but there was just a lot of other aspects that felt like the boyfriend being... That was something that I think early on watching was like, I think that seems a little bit too convenient, that he's like, there's a shipping container. Oh, it just happens to have this. You can have it.
Yeah.
It's like...
That went over my head, but probably a less naive person like you.
Well, I was just... I don't know. It just struck me. So a lot of times stuff like that will also go over my head, but I was like, I think...
There's something up with that.
Yeah. And he just... People got a read on him, too, and were saying, I don't like him.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you're kind of like, okay, that is going to be... Yeah. So... That didn't do much for me. And her choosing to kill him, it's like, yeah, that's an obvious choice. Right?
Yeah.
It just... I don't know. I honestly think you make it more challenging as a writer. Right? Maybe she really does love someone.
Yeah.
And it's like... You're taking it to a more like it can be more fulfilling for the audience when you actually challenge, put yourself into a corner where it's like, all right, well, how can I create?
Very tough choice.
Yeah,
Although she did with her brother, I guess that was the
yeah,
because I mean, obviously,
That's a
it's
good
know
point.
who should die, the guy who betrayed me, or this boyfriend of my brother,
who hasn't really done anything
basically
wrong.
just there.
Yeah, but I'm also so from that perspective, I think it did actually take a tougher choice. Okay, so we left off. We were kind of talking about some of the better aspects of the remake.
Yeah, it's. I think I'm glad they did it. I'm glad someone still cares about it. I just don't think it was good enough. But they do have an opportunity, because like the sequel to Hellraiser, the original was better. So maybe they're just getting their sea legs under them to relaunch it, and it was they kind of reintroduced the characters, and now they can maybe do something with them. The first one, the plot was very thin. You know, it just wasn't well done. But I mean, the production values were higher. I would say that.
Yeah, production value. And again, I think I said it earlier. It kind of seemed like a bit too nice, and it's
There's no rawness about it,
yeah, felt overproduced, I guess.
perhaps. But it's supposed to be almost as like raw as like Chainsaw Massacre. Granted, it's a different type of movie, but these Cenobites are not supposed to be in any way fair. They're essentially just demons, and
Yeah.
they want suffering, and they hate.
Demons to some, angels to others.
In the end, always demons, though. I mean, you may find pleasure, but it's not going to last. The way it, like you say, it's a monkey's paw type of thing, where, ask for $1 million and you get it because your son dies and had a life insurance policy on himself for you. It's under very tragic, or you want to be the most important person in the world, and you end up being Hitler right before the fall of the Third Reich.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah, that is a good point. The drug addict aspect was a bit. I guess it's a pretty good metaphorically, because, like you said, that is almost how the box works.
yeah,
And she was kind of able to break through that at the end of her character arc.
yeah.
Which was cool. She was decent acting wise.
Yeah, it was anticlimactic too. It just like the ending was just like
The very end was where I think they were trying to go. What they is a relatively new term called elevated horror, where Hereditary I think is pretty good at that. Midsummer is good at that. Where the guy who had the chest piece and then manufactured the whole thing to get a second audience, to make a second request, he seemed to transcend and become something.
yeah.
And I think that's the one part where it was like, okay, very interpretive. I'm not sure where my feet landed on the ground with that and what they were trying to say.
I think it's unfinished. It's almost like a part 1 of 2. I feel
Yeah.
it's unfinished. Now there was some reckoning as far as with the girl. Granted,
I would say her arc is,
oh
yeah.
yeah, she
But with that character, he might be the catalyst for a part 2.
which I would really love to see, but they have to write a better script. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how
It
how
lacked
exactly
something.
to. Yeah, it felt derivative.
Yeah, or just uninspired
Yeah.
completely. I just, I mean, now the Cinnabites look elegant.
It was just like when I say derivative, because
I know. I agree with you. I know what you mean. I just, I don't even know if I could call it. I mean, if they derived it from a good plot, but I just don't think the plot was that good. I just thought it was really bland.
yeah, like they just kind of almost relied on the tropes that could work
Yeah,
and create a cool spin to everything,
yeah,
and like that drug thing works, but it's like so overly done
yeah.
that things are metaphors for drug addiction. And if you asked me to name like a few, it just feels like at this station, you have to bring a lot more than that.
There needed to be more horror. There just wasn't enough horror.
Yeah, it didn't. The scenes where people were being caught by the Cenobites, or I thought, okay, it's a slow burn where it's just a little bit at a time.
Yeah, which I'm fine with, but at some point
There was
you've got to amp
yeah,
up
the
the horror.
the build up lacked at the end of the build up.
Yeah, yeah.
The max volume was just not
There.
yeah. To where I think what they thought would be impactful in hindsight was just not impactful.
If they thought that was, then they got a bad. They test screened it, and the people lied to them because that you can't say that that was.
It was almost just inoffensive. To where I was like, I think my initial reaction was it wasn't bad, it wasn't great,
Yeah.
and it was like just good enough to where you could enjoy certain aspects of it, but and I don't even know. There's certain films that, for example, one that always sticks with me is Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, where I felt like there was so much meat on the bone that could have been something that was just a masterpiece, and like something that took horror to a completely new level. When you look at the acting, the costumes, the story, and the ability to take that in a direction and use a style, which I think was used effectively. His style and that gothic look were awesome, but to do a beat for beat retelling of the story of Dracula, and let's use these old accents, and not necessarily maybe focus on a different spin on it, or this theme is something that stuck with maybe Coppola, and he's like, I want to really shine a light on this, whereas other interpretations never did. It sunk it so badly. And people might say, and I don't even know if you've seen this film, but
Parts of it. I never saw it in start to finish.
people want to blame Keanu Reeves, which he was definitely a low light of it, but that was just enigmatic of the problems as a whole. It just felt like the direction of it was bad. This is not quite in that vein. The only similarity I would say is that the subject material is there and it's interesting, but
They got to do something way more. They can't. They can't basically take this and make it slightly better, or whatever. And I think, and they won't, but I think they should do Scarlet Gospels. I think they have. I don't think they've done enough with Pinhead so far, but I still think they should go for, because that story is something. That story has meat on the bones. Whereas this story didn't have it at all. But that we have these. Well, really, Pinhead is. I think it's the only one in Scarlet. Like the other ones aren't, and the other Cenobites aren't in it or anything like that.
And they're fairly interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean they're cool looking, but there's other scenes in
you
that
could make
book.
someone look just as cool though.
Well, there's actually the dead body of Satan. He built like a suicide throne. Okay, and what it is, whatever he set it off, all these like spears shot out of the throne into him to kill him, and so the Hellraiser sees that and realizes that there is no Satan. Satan had disposed of himself. So that could be that you could do, and there's many other characters that you could do stylistic things, tons of different things. Just showing hell, because hell has a
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
yes, that's irrelevant here, but I think it's Mercury is the sun in hell. I believe it's Mercury.
Okay.
And I thought they called it Lodestar or something like that. And I was actually looking it up the other day. But they talk about it, and it's it's very pale. It's not like a real sun, but that's the the celestial body in hell, and there's it's just a very involved story. A lot of stuff happens, and actually, well, I'm not going to go on to that, but that's what they should follow up with. They want to make an impact, because this did not. This showed some very cool characters, which were the Cenobites, and that's it.
Yeah, like so the highlights kept it afloat for me as like not a bad movie experience, and you could very much argue it was average, but I put it at just like a good.
I'd go above average. That's the best.
Yeah.
Like I said, I told someone, it's like I waited 20 years for this. It's a big letdown, for something. I never thought they would remake this, and they did, and I was happy about that. But other than that,
the look of the Cenobites was cool. And then I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but the details that they added to the box and like the added meaning and the explanation of everything I liked, because that stuff is really interesting. The inner workings of that whole realm, how the Cenobites operate, what the puzzle box does.
yeah. So it adds more to the mythology.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have done it, because you can find yourself by doing that. So, like at the end
You
of it,
can
if you
really
can get all the way
screw
through
yourself.
it, yeah, I mean, you can find yourself, but is an audience with God, which is the ultimate prize. If you're going to pick one, that's it. And,
But
even
that
lesser
didn't
than
seem that didn't make sense
for them.
and how it worked. It didn't seem like the audience with God was like, now you get to choose one of the other options, is how it seemed to me, because
Well, it's assumed that if you get to the last level, and I don't even really know how you do it. I mean, the box just changes. So
Well,
if you have somebody
essentially-
else who gets sacrificed, and
if
you
you
keep the box,
sacrifice enough people,
yeah. So that's the ultimate prize, but you can choose a lesser prize by achieving the 6th rank. Do you understand
Okay.
that?
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was obviously, like you said.
I mean, even
You
below
see-
an audience with God is to bring someone back from the dead,
Yeah.
which is a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
obviously. So, and an audience with God, is...
That is kind of an avenue that they could go down to. See what
There's
that would
some
mean.
evilness, though. I mean, they were all positive things that could happen to you.
Yeah.
But where's the E? I mean, this is about Satan and his minions. I don't know. I that part was kind of confusing. I don't know if they've actually thought that all through. It's like, oh, these are positive things that you can achieve by the box. But the box also will tear you to shreds, or make you into a Cenobite, or
Yeah, I guess if you look at the mythology, it's almost like the negative aspects that would happen. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to kind of think
there's
it
actually
through.
no rules, I guess.
Well, there's more.
Well, we'll kill this guy, but this guy will, give the second level. Or
There's
whatever.
a benefactor to each solving, whereas that was never a thing. It's in that the box is supposed to operate like that, where you almost can't. It's very difficult, but somehow the girl does it numerous times to solve it without self-inflicting a wound that would be mortal.
Yeah.
Somehow she's amazing at that. That didn't bother me, but that situation was never boiled down to that strict a definition in the original. It's if you solve it, doesn't matter if you dupe someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Although
There's always a sacrifice.
Isn't there? You can somehow get another person. So I guess they just expanded upon that.
Yeah. But normally you do it through treachery as opposed to they just do
You can
it.
stab someone.
If somehow you get the Cenobite to say, look, I'll bring somebody else.
Oh yeah,
That happened
Yeah.
in the second one. And and also in the second one I talk about the girl. She's basically an idiot savant or a autistic savant, so she could solve the puzzle. Mm-hmm. That's why this doctor at this insane asylum or whatever kind of facility it was similar to that, saw that opportunity because this girl could solve the thing, and it's a disturbing movie in some respects. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't know. They could actually remake the second one just to do it better. More people would see it and like it. I believe the plot is good enough.
I think that's definitely underseen, and I don't know how much I've seen of the second one. I've seen the third one most of the way through, but the second one I'm not super familiar with.
Yeah.
So I think it just kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, no, I've never heard anyone really talk about it, but
yeah. Well, you said above average, so
above average.
about
6.
That's what I gave it as well.
I give it a 6. I'll give it a 6.5 because it wasn't cheesy. The acting was
not
enough.
Yeah, it wasn't cheesy.
Yeah, plot was very thin and just kind of uninspired, uninteresting. Mm-hmm. Special effects very good. Characters exquisite, I thought.
Looking.
Yeah, but
Like,
their mannerisms,
right.
like you said, they're like if you
Almost
put
like
up like a
mannequins.
3-foot fence, they can't get by it.
Yeah.
Oh well, I stopped the Cenobite. That was easy.
There was like on the road, they were able to kind of do some stuff that they did feel inevitable and like it's not something you could outrun. So they got it right in that aspect, and I think they might have sacrificed them being the scary factor to it to try to pose this bigger threat, a la the original where Frank became the bad guy at the very end, as opposed to having both threats looming, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess it followed that formula. It just felt more effective for whatever reason, more grounded in realism.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, I'm just going to say, like, I want them to continue, but I don't know if the director needs to be changed
Oh.
or the writer.
Something has to be changed in it. They should continue. I don't know if they will. I guess it depends on how successful this is.
Yeah. The thing with streaming movies, it is difficult. The bar, I think, is set differently.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. I don't even know how they figure it out. Well, I guess they could. I mean, they know
See how many people viewed it.
Right. So that's whatever is driving people to a site. They know. Well, this worked. This didn't. So it's basically just ratings. They just see downloads.
Yeah.
That's more accurate than like the Nielsen's because the Nielsen's just sampling.
Yeah.
It's fairly good. It's probably small degree of error, but this is perfect. They know exactly how many down roads.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would be interested to see how many people, because I think that would also be a good indicator of how many like the original. Well, I don't know, but I feel like it got some decent traction, at least from what I've seen.
It was rated well. It was rated well, but then there was like a kind of a dichotomy where there's other people that were, whatever, and other people really liked it. Mm-hmm. And, I'm a huge fan of that, and I was not overly impressed. I mean, there's so much to do, and they just dropped the ball.
Yeah. I think they got it to the point where at least the majority of the people are going to say this is, like, enjoyable. Like like around a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Which is perfect for Rotten Tomatoes. That's how you're going to get, like... But it might... If it's
got like an 85 on Rotten Tomatoes. I can't remember if that was critics or audience, but
it's like the majority
is freaking good.
Yeah, but it's not one of those movies that's like a smash, where it's like, hey, look, I give this a 10.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of people are like, yeah, this isn't an offensive movie that
could watch it.
Just
watchable.
Enough. Yeah. So last but not least, it is Beetlejuice by Tim Burton. And I guess, how do you like Tim Burton, the director? Because he's definitely got a macabre style to him.
Mm-hmm. You mean famous. On this movie or just in general?
In general.
I like that. I like his style. Like, I liked Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
That's a very good movie. I read somewhere that was overrated. I'm like, no, it's not. It is not overrated. It's a good freaking movie.
Yeah, I think as far as, like, Halloween-themed movies...
Well, this was weird. I was looking... You know how they all these lists and stuff on the internet. And one was overrated movies. And it said Inception. I'm like, no. That's the opposite of overrated. It's an incredible movie. And it's those type of movies that are almost impossible to get made. And I know they had trouble getting it made, and they just pulled it off. It was a great movie.
Yeah, I think people, it might take a while before they can fully appreciate what Nolan was able to do. I think when you look at great...
In today's day and age, there is no, they get it 6 months or they never get it. Nobody looks back. It's not like it used to be. There's so many movies a year, as opposed to like when I was growing up, there were movies into movies, and that was it. And movies of the week, which were horrible on television.
Yeah.
So now, like they've quadrupled the output, so people don't.
Things get lost, but I think there's still a decent amount of people who look back.
Maybe, yeah, you could be right. I'm not sure.
To find, I think it's because that is more accessible, right? The sea is much bigger, but our nets are more effective. There's so much that you can watch.
But there's limited time in your...
Yeah, that's true.
We watch more, but we still have limitations on what all we can watch. But that's just a well-made... But anyway, I was actually talking about Nightmare Before Christmas, and that is a very good Tim Burton.
Well, yeah, because Nightmare Before Christmas probably sits at the top of my list for a bunch of different like categories. Halloween themed, Christmas themed, stop motion.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to do like...
Is that stop motion?
I don't know if the entirety of it is, but for sure a lot of it is.
But anyway, when you talk about Beetlejuice...
Claymation, which is a form of stop motion, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. But Beetlejuice is... what's his name? Michael Keaton. I mean, he's the movie. That's it. He's the movie. The rest of them, James Baldwin's in it, and he's a major star. Alec, and I mean, you barely know he's in it. And the woman was...
Gina Davis.
I mean, they're fine. But
Winona Ryder.
okay,
She
yeah.
stuck out a little bit more. She was effective. The dad, aka the principal from Ferris Bueller,
Yeah.
and then the mom is, she's relatively.
Kahn. Her last name's Kahn. Madeline Kahn, I think. Yeah.
She married
She's been
to
around
James
forever.
Caan?
No.
Oh, okay.
They just don't even spell the same.
Oh.
Spelled Kahn. She's a long time. She was in like, I think, if I'm thinking correctly.
Unusual Suspects, the sequel to Usual Suspects.
Was there a sequel to that?
I just made that up.
Oh, okay. All right. But it's Michael Keaton. The rest of them are bit players and they do their part and they're fine. It's Michael. I mean, that's it.
What?
That's the movie.
Let's
and he's
not,
great.
Yeah. I don't think it can be overstated how good he was.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, and I'm not saying, but he's it. He's the movie. I mean, otherwise.
And interesting premise and really neat aesthetic is the standout. Those are the highlights of the movie.
I don't know what you mean by that.
All the artwork and the spooky stuff, like the snakes, the things that
you're right. They were
Michael Keaton became.
Yeah.
Even when Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin did the weird faces to try to scare.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I liked. I don't even know what to begin to call that. Abstract horror, I guess, is.
Yeah.
It seemed like
It's surrealism.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
it looked like. Damn, who's the artist who created the Scream?
I don't know. It's not Salvador Dali. It's.
It looked like those paintings came to life, though. You know?
Yeah.
And I loved all the character designs when they were in like the.
That makes it a nice film, but it's Michael Keaton is the film. He's hilarious.
Yeah, but that doesn't.
He's
I completely
an
agree.
antagonist that everybody
Loves. But that doesn't detract from it.
No, it does that.
That's a huge. I mean, there's sometimes a one-man show is just what you need, and like he was hysterical, and he wasn't scary.
Edward Munch. Sorry, that's who the Scream is by. Which,
Really?
by the way, yeah.
Never would have guessed that.
I was going to say Picasso maybe, but
I thought it was
the Scream. What the Scream is about is what the person is witnessing.
Okay.
You know that?
Did not know that, but that does make some sense. I would say. Who's like a good horror comedies? I think they get looked at in different lights.
A different kind of movie, for sure.
Some of them
Not
are
a lot of them either.
uber effective. For example, Cabin in the Woods, I think is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
One of my favorite Halloween horror, whatever. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
'Cause that's just very well thought. This is a simple premise that it's not overdone either. Because I think it's kind of one of those premises where once it's done well,
You can't do it.
Yeah, you do it again, you're just ripping off.
And you're not going to do it as well.
Exactly. So
So
it's like, this is like...
Well, here's an example of that, and it's a total remake, is when they remade Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it doesn't go with the same name. It's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. With Johnny. I mean, come on. I don't understand what the point was. There's nobody other than Gene Wilder who can play that part. Johnny Depp, who may have been the closest, couldn't touch it. So that's a remake, and I don't even understand why. I mean, I guess I understand why. It's just when the original was that good.
Money.
Yeah, you're right. But that's right. So, like,
And you want to
people
know...
don't care what I think. They care what their audience will think.
Yeah.
If their audience will pay to see it, they'll make it.
And I'm not critical of this. I understand maybe where people are coming from. There is, with some people, an aversion to movies prior to a certain date. They just won't watch movies
Yeah.
from, if it's not
Like 1908. Like you're familiar with that and watch a lot of movies from that time period.
not 1908. But see, everyone has a line.
That's not true. Like I watched Jaws from the 70s and it's a great movie. Other movies around that time.
Your line is probably just further back
1970.
than some people's.
Yeah,
And
I mean, because those are.
I think everyone you're gonna miss out on something, but
Yeah.
it's
But there's certain movies that you'll go back to see. Like I love The Exorcist, like I've talked about
Yeah.
all the time, and it's an old movie. And
But
it's,
okay,
it's just
think
good.
think about it this way. That was made prior to my birth. Okay. Mm-hmm. Word of mouth you have to have faith in the discretion of others, right?
Well,
You've
just to
seen
watch it.
You've seen it. That's why you go back to it.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, like that movie, I wouldn't have seen had you not loved it, right? There's movies you've never seen because they predate when you were born, and you're just really not gonna know unless you just have faith in the recommendation of others.
True. Yeah.
And there are movies that predate you that are amazing. And some you're probably
right, and
familiar with
I have
because
an aversion to them. I just won't watch them. Metropolis is really old, but I've read. Oh, it's great. It's wonderful. Another one, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Mm-hmm. It's like, right. I might try it, but if it's not doing anything in 20 minutes, I'm out. Same with Metropolis, which is way back. You know.
yeah. It's I can't remember. I think I just watched something by that director. It's not F.W. Murnau, is it?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, it is a classic. Metropolis.
Yeah. German expressionism, I believe, is
Well, it's a dystopian.
I'm actually not super familiar, although someone I was talking to about movies did explain it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Is bourgeois, a little dynamic going there, and
Proletariat bourgeois?
yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah, the class struggle.
Yeah, that's the working class versus upper middle class, whatever they consider the bourgeoisie.
And then there's a robot.
I don't know enough of a lot about it.
Yeah, I've never watched it. We'll have to watch it sometime. We'll see if you like it. The Universal monster movies, I kind of thought it would just be like, people look at it with reverence because they're older and they kind of set the foundation for others to build off of.
Right.
But some of them probably exist off of their name value alone.
Oh, yeah.
I would argue Dracula is one that it was very lackluster to me.
Yeah.
Everything besides Bela Lugosi's
Okay.
look and
Yeah.
presence was just very lackluster. Mm-hmm. But Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein, I thought,
Good.
were like legitimately 90 years after the fact. I'm like, they are actually just good, compelling movies
Okay.
that don't really suffer from what you would,
Passage of time.
yeah, all the things that you would associate with an older movie, just it was not nearly as prevalent in the film.
I wouldn't watch it. I mean, and I know, and I've seen them. So, and I do remember watching Dracula and thinking, oh my God, But
when those things slip in, it gives a bad aura that taints other movies around it.
yeah,
Like and I'm somewhat guilty because I gave it a positive rating, not as high as Frankenstein, but still close to other films in that realm. Mm-hmm. And it's like when people inflate the ratings of it, they're like, well, they're full of shit. Why would I watch any of these? They thought this was good.
yeah,
So I think it is important to say Now look, is it terrible? No, but it's just not holding up nearly as well.
It's just kind of dull and plodding.
It's not as venomous
Yeah.
as some other movies.
Yeah.
This is, for what it is, effective. I think it's like,
Beetlejuice?
yeah.
It's a really, really good horror comedy.
Yeah. It's something that I think like it could be like a family movie night.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah.
It's like perfect for that.
Yeah. I mean, he's just killer in that movie, Michael Keaton. And I really think that just like
It's
cemented his career as a great comic actor.
and he's gone and I think you can see his range in this, in that it goes beyond comedy, but I think this, and you would know better than I, because I know he's been Batman, I know he's been Birdman, and I know he's been Hawk. The Hawk from, forget what that character's name is, but he's in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. Vulture.
Okay.
So he has an affinity for birds. Or flying things.
Flying things.
Nevertheless, did he get typecasted? Because I think that was the criticism before he became Batman, and that was right around this time period. Because this was 1988. Batman was 1989.
I don't know if he was considered to have done. I mean, Batman is not a comic role, so
Absolutely not. I think a lot of people.
he's a comic guy.
I might have completely misworded it. I think people were very down on him
Being Batman.
taking that role because they considered him to be a comic actor. What movie was he in? Was it Two Nannies and a Baby or something like that? I have no idea what the
Who's
actual
Mr.
name.
Mom?
That's
Yeah.
it. I hope someone found that to be hilarious because
Two
Two
babies and a
mommy.
nanny. Yep. Two babies living alone. Put it in for a newspaper ad for a nanny, and a nanny shows up, and hilarity ensues.
but that movie, just the title,
Mr. Mom.
yeah,
Yeah. It was funny. It was good.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was good at it. He was, people, I think I saw, like, maybe his actual first movie where he probably got some, people said, oh, he's a funny guy. And he was funny. I think it was called Night Shift. It was with Henry Winkler. And they worked at a morgue, and somehow they started, like a prostitution business between the two of them, and it was really funny and so forth. There was a line in
Things
it
that wouldn't fly in 2022. Although I really think
don't
it
know.
would. I think it would.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like racist at all, or any. It wasn't. I mean, it didn't make the sex workers seem like they were, low class or anything.
Yeah.
But it was a funny scene where he's in a tennis outfit, and he's with Henry Winkler, and they're in trouble, like they're at their lawyer's office or something, and like Michael Keaton doesn't think anything of it. Like there's nothing bad's going on, and Winkler is plays a neurotic person anyway, and they kind of get into a fight, and he says to Henry Winkler, he says, "What are you doing? I'm wearing white." He's like, "I got to play tennis after this." He's like, "You're going to play tennis with God."
Who is Henry Winkler again?
Oh, he's the Fonz. That's Henry
Oh,
Winkler.
Okay. I think you said that, but it just.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, the Fonz at one
Yeah.
time. But though after a while, that got really old. That character.
Yeah.
He probably thought so too when he was doing it. But
Yeah, I mean, I've heard interviews with him. He's a really interesting guy. He seems like so nice.
really, oh
Yeah.
yeah, he is. He does seem like it. Yeah, I agree.
Like out of they, how they say never meet your heroes. But I think
Yeah.
if you're a fan of Fonz, you're probably in very good hands if you were to
I
meet
think
him.
they pushed that series so far that nobody's really a fan of the Fonz anymore. He just got sick to death of it. And that's where
and
the thing
I don't even
jumped the
know
shark.
that. I've heard that saying so much, and it doesn't.
What jumped the shark?
That doesn't mean anything to me.
Jumped the shark?
Yeah, I can't truly appreciate what that even means.
That means that they have
I know they
taken a
literally
concept and just bled it to death. They just used it over and over. Like it was Happy Days that it just went on for so long that it became a parody of itself. But he literally jumps a shark in an episode in his leather jacket.
Okay. Was that the last episode? Or
No, they kept going, but what they meant was after that was so ridiculous.
That people were...
There's like, oh, this is just a stupid waste. It's like, what are they even doing now?
Yeah. Okay. Because I kind of thought it was more or less just ridiculous plot as opposed to, like, just beating a dead horse.
Yeah. Yeah, it is the second, more so.
Yeah.
It's just where you take the concept and you jump the shark with sequels for basically every
You could
movie.
argue Hellraiser, that original series.
Oh yeah, they did for sure.
Because
it was ridiculous.
Once the actor of Pinhead didn't want anything to do with it, that was like a stamp of disapproval.
Yeah.
And I can't speak 100% because I haven't seen those movies, but I've seen other people's ratings.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people do in-depth analysis. Analysis.
That's what it is.
And just and also, like you said, it was just slap this label on this script that it has nothing to do, and let's crowbar this character in to make it work.
Yeah.
And at least the reboot seemed like the people behind it had an interest and a passion in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to advance it in some aspects. They did that. And I think that's why I'm appreciative of it, and it was above average for me. The good solid outing, but it just didn't hit any home runs. It just hit singles.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice, I thought it was very good. Not great, not a masterpiece, but just for, like you said, Michael Keaton alone. It's like
crushed it. He crushed it.
One of the best performances
of that type of character.
Yeah.
And nobody else could have done it. Maybe
ludicrous and bombastic.
Right. Maybe Jim Carrey in his prime.
Yeah. I think Jim Carrey could have, and I guess The Mask is probably the closest.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that even goes beyond Beetlejuice, The Mask.
I'd have to rewatch that. I was a huge fan of him, but I watched The Mask when I was so young I couldn't.
Oh, you should watch it, and because not only that, but who's the actress?
Cameron Diaz.
She's in it, and that alone is reason to watch.
Big fan of
at that point in time of her life. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this has the same feel as like A Nightmare Before Christmas to me. I can definitely tell that the same person behind that was also behind this. I think it's just because Beetlejuice.
Don't say it 3 times. So you know what happens.
He has a very similar look to Jack Skellington.
Yeah, he does. You're right.
Like the striped suit.
Yeah, in the white face.
Yeah.
With the dark.
Yeah, he's a good mind. I think Tim Burton. I think I don't know. He gets maligned sometimes and he gets praised by others. I think he's a little bit polarizing, but I think I'm a fan.
I think movies are always better with some of those people with a very unique vision. Mm-hmm. He adds to what I'll call the tapestry of filmmaking. Because he's very unique. Nobody else is very much like him. He's definitely not derivative. He's got something he sees that he wants to do, and he does it, and he does it well.
If he's inspired by anyone, it's merely inspiration and not, like you said, derivative. He's not a copycat by any means.
Now, the only thing maybe would be an art movement, which obviously it's not derivative because a painting cannot be the same as a movie. or a film. So, and it's like hyperrealism, surrealism, other, I can't remember what they said the scream was, but I think that would be the most fitting term for it.
I think we're going down a good path conversationally. Real quick though, before we get there.
It's called proto-expressionism.
Oh, so probably just expressionism as a whole could probably, because that's maybe more of a broad.
Impressionism. I don't know what expressionism is, but anyway, matters not.
Yeah, yeah. As far as art movements,
I know.
My favorite was when they got really good at creating realistic pictures that kind of told a story, like during the Renaissance.
The Renaissance.
Yeah.
Which means
rebirth.
Very good.
Yes. Where like the story behind the time period they're painting and behind the artist itself kind of adds to it. There's that meta element where it's like maybe the timing of everything matters a lot.
Yeah.
This could have been going on during an invasion, and maybe this artist was from wherever, so it's very poignant to him, and there's that underlying subtext to the whole picture.
In the background?
Could be background, and sometimes they would add little details to kind of clue you into stuff like that. But regardless of that, I gave it a 7.
I'll give it an 8. I mean, I think it's a solid 8.5, actually.
Okay.
If you were to group all those types of movies together, and there's not a lot, like Hocus Pocus, we just happened to watch recently, would be in there, which is okay.
That subcategory is a really rich subcategory, and when it is done well, I think
Beetlejuice is an older movie too, but it still holds up.
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah, they had these yuppies from New York come up there, buy a house. They want to take this like classic, whatever type of house it was, Victorian maybe, and just put in this bizarre, strange styling and so forth. And that's just that's not the plot, but it's not even a subplot maybe, but
it contributes
actually
to the conflict of.
Yeah, well, the ghost does not want those people in the house. So one of the original.
That's like almost like the plot of a very good Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, we just died, and these people we don't like are moving into our house.
Yeah.
It feels very.
You think?
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
I don't even know what kind of humor is that.
Seinfeld-ish?
Yeah.
Well, part of it is, and they weren't
how Larry David. It's like he has a problem with everything.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is cynical?
What's that?
Would cynical be?
Cynical, and not only that, but that's probably the key word there. But they weren't necessarily virtuous people. They weren't
the people
bad
moving in, or the people who died.
No, like the Seinfeld cast.
Oh yes, yeah.
They weren't virtuous people. They weren't bad people, but
they were kind of relatable though. And I think it's like people you would want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Despite them actually kind of not being great.
Right.
If you were to like actually look at each action.
And I tell you what, in like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, for instance, is a step below.
Yeah.
Like not only they're not virtuous,
they're
dysfunctional.
Yeah.
They're dysfunctional. They operate a crappy bar. The one character is always trying to kill rats in the basement.
Yeah. Some of them live in like a really terrible apartment building.
Their apartments are horrendous. Is the one mother for what's the character's name?
Dee?
No, not the woman.
Charlie.
I think it's Charlie's mother, who's just horrifically disgusting, despicable. Not despicable, but whatever. We got off track there. What were we talking about?
The one thing I wanted to end on, because I felt like it was really interesting discussion at hand was broadening movie tastes and what you are willing to watch. And what would open you up to that?
To what?
To watching, like you said, there's certain...
Older movies?
Yeah, older, foreign...
They gotta be really, really good. Because they're gonna be dated.
Well, there's a lot that are.
I don't think anything. I'm very set in my ways, and what I feel is like with
Can't
horror,
teach an old dog new tricks.
That's right. I mean, I'm a horror purist. It's
The
like
one-
people say this is a horror movie. I'm like, no, that is not a horror movie. It's suspenseful. It's not horror.
And that's another, I think, meaty discussion. But from not even horror-based movies, right? Older movies, because I think the way that you examine the horror movies, you're very particular. You're very detailed when you watch them, right?
Well, I want them to fall within certain guidelines.
You're very thoughtful. A very
if they go
thoughtful
outside
viewer.
that, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I do notice things a lot of times. Other times I may overlook really simple things or really basic things, but I'll notice like plot holes. Sometimes it's like, what? I don't understand how they missed that. I mean,
Yeah.
they can't expect, because then it just screws everything up. You know, you've stopped suspending the disbelief. It's because this isn't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where. I guess maybe we were talking about something. Oh, we were talking about last week about things that really happen in real life that aren't connected to the plot at all, and they should be there. You know, they shouldn't be there as a distraction or whatever. But they should. You're living in real life. You make it when you are able to get people. The more they suspend the disbelief, generally the better the movie will be.
For example, Reservoir Dogs, the diner scene.
That's not believable at all.
So we're coming at this from completely different perspectives.
They had this little stupid argument about tipping and whatever. Crime people don't give themselves Mr. White, Mr. Black, all this stupid stuff. You just don't. It's not. He's stylistic violence. That is Quentin Tarantino.
That's one of his calling cards. Don't give me. But I also think his dialogue is some of the best.
I mean, some people could enjoy it. It's not realistic. It's stylistic.
I think the premise of arguing about something so minute is very realistic.
They
Because
jumped the
I've done
shark
that.
on that conversation.
I thought it was enjoyable. I think it was one of the scenes where I was like, so you could do this with a movie.
Yeah.
Not even like, it wasn't like, oh, I've had this conversation, but I have argued about things as dumb as tipping.
Yeah, way beyond the point of reasonableness.
But it was something where I was like, okay. So it's like you don't always have to be writing as exposition.
Mm-hmm.
You can do character development by writing conversations. And you can learn about characters through something that doesn't necessarily apply to the ultimate
I don't think that developed
goal.
the character. I mean, it was snappy dialogue. Which is fine.
There's and I can't say I was smart enough to pick up on this on my viewing, but apparently people say the opening scene cues you into who the undercover is, because they act in a way, and well, just spoiler alert, it doesn't ruin the movie at all, because I think you even know the whole time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they let you in that Mr. Orange, or at a certain point. Wait,
At some point, yeah, they definitely did.
Okay, because he's going over the speech.
And then I hated that.
That part wasn't.
You have to have a good speech. It's like, okay, well maybe, but yours was stupid. All right.
Yeah, that part didn't
just
ruin the movie for me.
Dramatized that.
That wasn't the best part of that movie. I love that movie, by the way.
I know a lot of people love it.
I think it might be one of my favorite Tarantino films. I love Pulp Fiction, but I think Reservoir Dogs might be my favorite. No, Kill Bill. Kill Bill Volume 1, then 2, and then probably Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
But also I haven't seen. Anywho, that wasn't great, but he rats out the person who didn't leave a tip, Mr. Orange, because Buscemi doesn't put in a tip, and the head guy comes and says, "Who the hell didn't put in their however much for the tip?" Mm-hmm. And he immediately rats out Buscemi.
Ow.
And that is like
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it gives you like some insight to the fact that Buscemi is just like a really neurotic, erratic, weird character.
Mm-hmm. I think the face kind of gives you that.
Yeah, that's why he's so successful. Also, I did not realize how good of an actor he was. I knew him from Mr. Deeds. I think was the first movie
God,
I had ever
horrible.
seen with him in, and he plays just a really weird side character.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was thinking, oh, where's Steve Buscemi for crying out loud? I think he's maybe friends with Sandler.
Yeah, I think he is. But Reservoir Dogs, he's amazing in. He's amazing in Fargo.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to
I
think.
read something about how he became an
Big
actor.
Big Lebowski.
How they never did a sequel. I mean, I'm not into like necessarily.
Isn't the
making
point?
sequels.
And I'm sorry to interrupt because it's actually I don't know if I can say he was great in Big Lebowski because I think the joke was they didn't let him perform, and I think that's the punchline is that Steve Buscemi's in this, but they don't let him hardly talk at all.
Well, he says, "Who is that character?" They didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because John Goodman was like a
Overbearing.
douche. Yeah. You're out of your element. I can't remember the guy's name.
Donnie.
You're out of your element, Donnie. And he dies of a heart attack when they're in a parking lot.
Yeah. I thought that was like meta comedy. Where it's Steve Buscemi, who is a great actor, which I learned by that point. But I'm like waiting for him to play a vital role, and it was just like the punchline is that he dies before he really gets
That's
to
not by
say...
In-N-Out Burger. We're not stopping at In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, In-N-Out Burger is really good. That's where it's at.
Okay. Final point. As a very thoughtful viewer, I think you are missing out on a lot of films, whether it be foreign or older. Mostly foreign, actually, because there's some that's not dated, but it is foreign. But it's very thoughtful, and it's like it hits places that directors really... Mainstream movies, if they ever hit that, mainstream will never hit it.
Yeah, because it doesn't sell.
And the auteurs... Christopher Nolan is one of the few that you're ever going to find who can actually get close to that. But he's clearly inspired by people who did it prior to him.
Yeah.
They set the framework of creating this feeling that is hard. It's almost inexplicable, but it can be captured in film.
Yeah. I think I felt that in Inception for sure.
Yeah. And I've said Tarkovsky like a million times, but Kubrick does it in a completely different way. But
Kubrick, as much as I like him, I loved The Shining and A Clockwork Orange, and I think he did Clockwork Orange, but he did 2001.
Yeah.
Which, again, I was looking at a list, and I consider that, I think, the #1 horror movie. But it's not a horror movie, it's just a great movie. And he set mood in that movie. It was just amazing.
2001.
Yeah, Space Odyssey. Yeah.
That was able to capture like the feel that Nolan can capture in his best.
At his best, but very few can capture the mood that Kubrick did in that movie.
Yeah, it is just. Some of the scenes, just pictures that they hold on.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful movies I
Yeah.
think you could ever see.
And the plot was real deep, very deep.
Yeah, it was something I didn't fully understand.
I think I understand it now. That there was the monolith.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call it something else, but it's a monolith. And it inspired an ape to use a bone as a tool.
it's inspired evolution, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then the astronaut at the end goes through whatever this thing of lights, which is really cool. But then he becomes the Star Child, so he becomes the next
Form of human.
form of human. Yeah. The
But why
evolution?
Why did the ground base or ground control want all of the characters to temporarily die? That's the part that I don't get. Do you
I'd have
remember
to watch it again.
the guy shut down the computer system? Hal.
Yeah.
HAL 9000. He shut it down, and as it was or very shortly after that, a recording plays, and it's like, by now you are at so and so. We had to shut off your life supply for, I'm not really sure why they did that, but they had to make them. They had to
Suspended animation?
Yeah, they had to temporarily
Probably-
freeze their
maybe
life.
they didn't have enough resources and air and so forth. That would make
That's
sense.
the only thing, but it seemed like it was like they could not live through maybe the lights.
Okay.
I think they were worried that, but by getting through that, they were able to
Okay.
transcend. But everyone else died.
It was only one character left.
Yeah. I'd have to watch it again. I'm not 100% what I'm trying to.
Well, I haven't seen it for a real long time, so I don't remember all the details and stuff. I mean, there was some. I remember like one scene where Hal asks one of the astronauts before they even go up. He said, because they talked about shutting Hal down, and he said, "Well, why dream? When you shut me down, why dream?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Of course you will. How all intelligent beings dream."
Mm-hmm.
And then in a later point in time, I guess that same guy was talking to Hal again, and he asks, I think he asked him again, and he says, he said, "No, you won't. You will cease to exist," or something like that. I don't know why that always stuck with me, but
I think there's something there where it's like maybe trying to do commentary on the evolution of technology, aiding or inhibiting the evolution of human.
maybe, yeah.
I think maybe inhibiting is what he's kind of going for, because it took the shutting down of
Hal.
Hal for us to transcend into a new.
Hal had a different mission too. I did know that.
Yeah, was Hal somehow connected to the monolith too?
I don't believe he may have been, but I thought he just had a separate prime directive, which wasn't known until
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I have to carry this out. And you were expendable or something like that, if I remember correctly. But so
It's one of the best, most iconic shots is when Hal knocks the guy basically into space forever. The guy in the yellow spacesuit. Because visually that looks stunning, and the abruptness of it is like, it's so quick. You're not exactly sure.
Yeah.
And then I think it sets in when you see him kind of floating off.
Yeah.
And spinning, and you're like, holy shit! Like,
computer just killed that guy.
yeah, this is big. But yeah, I'll give you some movie recommendations, because I do think
Can't wait.
not putting thought into it, but
Do you have any
way
like
the way that you digest film,
Ivory Coast films that from the 40s that are?
it's mostly Russian, French,
Well,
German.
those three. There's a lot of nihilism in some of their movies,
Yeah,
and a lot of it is based on World War I and World War II.
when you specific, very artistic, ingenious directors, when you can see how those time periods maybe affected their countries differently. For example, there was a French New Wave director. He recently passed away, but he's very famous. It's Jean-Luc Godard. He was very... I think he wanted to inspire physical action and radicalism. Okay? And then there's this other very famous Italian director who was critical, but it also came from a place of reverence, the way he would comment on politics, and he would more or less point out the radicalism of people. And it was so neat because I watched them in very close proximity, where you look at an Italian guy who is pointing out the critical aspects of radicalism because he lived through a time period where someone in his country rose to power, had a radical idea, and almost brought them to the brink. Whereas you have a French director who had a very different experience and maybe was critical of how they were able to be pushed over. And it's just kind of neat how those major events inspire filmmaking.
Yeah, they're reflected in the national news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are very individual.
Want to bring that out. They want to demonstrate it in their filmmaking.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was a great discussion.
Very good.
Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
Much appreciated. Next week, I think it's going to be Freddy ×2. Or we can always switch it up.
No, that's fine. That's cool. I mean, actually the first one,
Which
the original,
one we're going to be watching,
is very, very scary at times. The scariest part to me is in the school.
Yes.
And the girl's in the body bag, and she's, I don't know, somehow she's flopping or whatever. She's going through the things, and the thing about that you're very completely vulnerable in your dreams because
and it's inspired by actual sleep paralysis and I think a disease in the Viet Cong or close to that area where people thought that there were gnomes strangling them in their sleep and they would die.
Are you sure
in their sleep.
You mean gnomes or like
small
demons?
People, small demons if they were demons.
Gnomes doesn't inspire fear.
Gnomes. It like little
jungle
like
gnomes.
Little like furry and just had like little arms. So not gnomes, but just in size, they were like
Small
gnome sized.
pygmies.
Yeah, the school scene, I don't know. Did they mention it at all, or maybe I thought of this or someone else did? It almost looked like the Virgin Mary, that lady in the body bag, because it looks like that headpiece that Virgin Mary has.
I don't remember. I just remember that
like,
it scared me.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was almost like a perversion of a religious
Icon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like super freaking effective, but also some of the death scenes are just top notch. It started out on a great note.
Yeah.
And then the new Nightmare, which is Wes Craven's, which I think it's starting to get its flowers now, and I think people are starting to really look back and think this was a reboot that didn't get the praise it deserved
at the time. Yeah. A lot of times these get a rebirth on streaming, and I think that's all wonderful. I really, really do, because there's a lot of underappreciated films. At this point in time, people don't go to the movies, but they will want to see it.
Yes.
So thank goodness for the
my
filming.
thought process is always let's wait for it to come out on streaming.
Well, I think everybody is now. I mean, I don't. I think it's dead. It's killed that industry, but they still make movies. They make more of them.
That's why.
And they'll make smaller movies too, because you don't have to worry.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why Hulu and Netflix, I think, are Netflix now is almost its own can of worms, but at least Hulu is becoming a player. Hopefully that continues to advance, but Hellraiser.
Yeah.
I mean, they made it.
Right.
And that works to put it straight to streaming. Add to your own library. Have something in perpetuity. It's neat.
Very much.
And people are now starting to be like, oh, I wish I got a movie release. That would be cool if they could get the best of both worlds, but I'm just happy that I get to watch new movies
Yeah.
when I want.
Yeah, we've changed as a society.
Yeah. It
Based
used to
upon
be a big
streaming.
event, and
Yeah.
it's nice, but I've always preferred the comforts of home, but the popcorn of the theater.
Yeah. We're well aware, Taco. We're
Yeah.
well aware of your popcorn eating habits. At least I am.
Yeah. Well, that's all for us. Thank you again for joining.
My pleasure.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the Flippity Flute. Bye, y'all.
I would.